Can you believe there's actually a chance of snow in Tampa this weekend? Very chilly out, which is why I'm wearing my Oreo sweater. My parents got this for me for Christmas. I just saw Iron Lung. This is a passion project from Markiplier. He stars in it, he directed it, and he helped write it. I believe it was fully self-financed by him. This is not a big studio project, and this is perhaps one of the most ambitious forays of YouTuber into cinema that I've seen thus far. He really went in fucking balls deep, that's for sure. And it is based on a video game of the same name, Iron Lung, which I have played. I did not like the game at all. I know people really poo-poo on my take on Iron Lung, but I just did not get into the game. It was not for me. But I was very excited to see this film because the universe of Iron Lung, like the lore of it, I do find fascinating when I went and actually gave it a chance after suffering through the game. And the best part about Iron Lung as a movie is I don't have to play the gameplay of it. So now I get the good stuff, which is the story of Iron Lung, which is a delightful treat. I don't have to eat my vegetables with that gameplay. I just get to kick my little legs in the chair and have a good time. So, the big question on everyone's mind, is Iron Lung good? I would say it is. Now, I don't think it's a movie that's going to be for everyone. This is a movie that I think fans of Markiplier will be very pleased with, fans of Iron Lung will be extremely pleased with, because it is like one-to-one with the game. And I also think it's a film that anyone that appreciates eldritch horror type content or slow burns will also like. But it does have some shortcomings. Now, I know Markiplier was going to some of the premieres, and one of the things that he was mentioning is try not to spoil things. So in the spirit of that, I will, for the first time in a while, avoid spoilers while talking about this movie. Quick side note, I was a little bit giddy in my chair, kind of hoping Markiplier would make a surprise visit to Tampa here for this premiere. I was half expecting him to rappel from the fucking ceiling or something, like, "What the fuck is up, Tampa?" or something like that, but didn't happen, so I gotta say I'm a little disappointed there. I feel like, you gotta be looking at Tampa when you're looking at some kind of big, premiere type shenanigans. It's very surprising and peculiar to not pay a visit to Tampa. But anyway, Iron Lung, you will spend 95% of the film with Markiplier locked in a sub as he is losing his mind on this mission, set in a world where all the stars and habitable planets have vanished and humanity's basically on the brink of extinction. In an effort to survive and try and press forward, they send a convict named Simon, played by Markiplier, in a submarine in an ocean of blood on an important mission for the sake of humanity. They have found some... I don't know how deep I can get into the synopsis without it getting into spoiler territory. An ocean of blood is set on a planet that they have been investigating, and Simon is now tasked with an important mission. Should Simon complete this mission, he earns his freedom. Simon has a dark and mysterious past, much like Urgot from League of Legends, and this is his way of getting back into society doing this mission. His submarine is called the Iron Lung, and it's got some wacky tech there, and it is a fucking tank. It is built like a colossal shit wagon. This puppy is built to last, and it is equipped with a camera that he will be taking pictures with, and then, of course, sharing with the rest of the station. Those pictures are of the utmost importance with what he finds at the bottom of the ocean of blood. That's kind of the broad strokes narrative in a nutshell, and I think it's a very interesting narrative that by the end of the film, I think becomes very captivating. But I think the first half of the film is very, very slow, and I think fans of the property are going in expecting that. They know it's going to be a slow burn, but if you don't know anything about Iron Lung and you're expecting a horror movie starring Markiplier, you may be a little underwhelmed for the first 30-ish minutes of it, because this is Markiplier doing some chores, taking some pictures, doing some homework basically, crunching some numbers, and occasionally talking to a woman over the intercom. And for me personally, I didn't have a problem with it. It does very much drag sometimes, but overall, it didn't bother me. I've never been someone that's been necessarily put off by slow burns, and I do like eldritch horror type things. So by the end of the film, I definitely did, care about Simon and the mission and basically everything that they had put on the plate. But I don't think everybody will. I think a lot of people might kind of tune out in the first half, and it won't be until the second half where they start to really give a fuck. Now, I want to get my biggest complaint out of the way immediately. I'll just rip the Band-Aid off. This movie, especially towards the end, has this, I don't even know if I can call it like a mixing issue or what, but there is just so many like characters talking sometimes that are layered on top of each other, and especially like the main antagonist, the way in which they speak and the way in which the filters are used on the voice makes it fucking impossible to comprehend what they're saying, like what words they're actually using. So a lot of like the dialogue that you hear from some of the characters is very mumbly, which I do think is by design, but it's also mixed in a way where even when I think it's supposed to be more clear and you're supposed to be able to like pick certain things up, certain elements from the speech and be able to understand the message of what they're saying, it's just inaudible and it's like impossible to decipher, like especially at the end, which again, I don't think was intentional because it felt like, especially when Simon was interacting directly with certain characters, that you wanted to know what was being said in return, and I think you were supposed to be able to understand it, but personally, I couldn't at all. Like, it felt like trying to remember a dream, trying to figure out what they were saying. Which adds to like the whole ethereal nature of like eldritch horror and all that, but it also just becomes kind of a headache when you're hearing Simon clearly respond to something that you have no fucking idea what was even said. So you're kind of like confused on, well, what is being said? Like you're hearing words, but it sounds like fucking, Charlie Brown's parents. I don't know. That just felt like a little off to me. Maybe not everyone will feel the same way, or maybe I'm just a fucking moron who just couldn't understand things and it's more clear for everyone else. I don't know, but it's something I wanted to make a mention of because it's definitely something I noticed very much at like the end of the film. But I want to make a strong mention of something. This movie looks surprisingly good on the big screen. I say surprisingly because when you hear of like an independent film from a fucking YouTuber that's, self-financing it, you're probably picturing like some pretty shoddy visuals that don't exactly look all that glamorous. And outside of like the first shot was a little rough. It immediately kind of put a sour taste in my mouth thinking I was about to be just watching like a YouTube short or something for Iron Lung because it didn't look all that great. But after that first shot, it settles into like this really good flow of cinematography where it's clear it's not a huge budget production, but it hides that really well with some creative shots that feel very claustrophobic and actually highlight some of the best moments of dread, where things look really good. And actually, even when they do show like some of the eldritch horror, I was expecting kind of, B-movie CGI. They did like a really good job for the most part when it came to like the CGI visuals, even outside of the submarine. The submarine, which by the way, is practical effects. It's on like a crazy hydraulic system where it's like fucking gyrating and shit. It's a really cool set that they've made for this. Like, I was really, really impressed, and it shines in the movie. They did a great job with that. But of course, there is some CGI when it came to like the eldritch horror elements, and they look very good, except for a couple of moments at the end of the movie. But for the most part, there's nothing here visually that'll make you go, ooh, that kind of looked like ass. It's all very solid, like across the board. I was very impressed. And I think the way they filmed their shots, like a lot of their shots are filmed in a way that do a great job at not letting you see that maybe it's not the biggest budget that they had to work with. And I do think one of the methods they used is one that I don't really like. They did a lot of shaky cam at the end. And I understand they're doing that because, again, it's not massive budget. So if they kind of just held like a, static camera there, it might not look as good. And it does kind of add to like the hectic nature of the things going on at the end. I get it. Not a big shaky cam guy. I've criticized that in a lot of other movies. I will, of course, make a mention of it here too. But it's not the biggest deal in the world because that's pretty much just reserved for the ending chaos. But now we gotta get to the biggest piece of the pie here. You're gonna be spending the majority of the movie watching Markiplier. The vast majority of this movie is Simon on screen Simon freaking out in the sub as he's uncovering horrifying things, as the eldritch horror is interacting with him and the world around him, and you're going to be watching him basically deteriorate, which means we go on an emotional journey with Simon, which means Markiplier is going to have to be doing a lot of heavy lifting with some high quality acting in order to sell this character to the audience. So this movie either hits or shits based on the audience's ability to separate Markiplier from Simon. If they can buy into Simon as a character as opposed to just Markiplier on the big screen. And that's where it gets tricky. Overall, I think his acting was good. There were some moments that were better than others. I do think when it came to like emotional beats where he's arguing with the woman on the intercom about certain things, again, I'm avoiding spoilers to the best of my ability, but when he's maybe divulging a bit from his past, I feel like it became very hard to see Simon the convict, and instead I was mainly seeing Markiplier instead of this character. Like, I don't think a lot of those conversations with the woman on the intercom were necessarily hitting the way that I think they wanted them to. And it's not really for any fault of Markiplier's acting. I just think the way that he's conveying his emotions on screen just wasn't really able to sell the stakes. So like when he's really getting frustrated with the woman on the intercom, he's saying, "Fuck you!" and "Fuck this! This is ridiculous! I don't," like that kind of stuff. Like I feel like I'm hearing Markiplier in a Let's Play as opposed to Simon the convict having a blow up at this woman on the intercom who is basically, I was just about to get into big spoilers, but who is maybe not as cooperative as he would like. So it at times was difficult to see Simon as opposed to Markiplier, but I don't think he ever did like a bad job at acting. It just, some scenes weren't really landing overly well, but I do think he did land more often than not, especially towards the end of the film. I feel like his acting throughout the film got better. Like, it felt like he got more comfortable playing this character the longer this went on, which is something I said very similarly in his show that he had. In that show, which, forgive me, I can't remember the name, about sleep, I actually think as the episodes went on, he got better. Like, it feels like Markiplier is someone who definitely has the ability to act, but needs time to acclimate to the character he's playing. So in Iron Lung, as we're nearing towards the big climax, towards the end of the film, he is really starting to get into much more of a flow state when it comes to this character, and I was buying into it a lot more, and it did start to shine. So I don't think his acting was bad or anything, but I do think, especially in the beginning where it is slow, and it is very much like Markiplier having to do most of the heavy lifting because he is what is on screen the majority of the time, there were moments where it just wasn't really feeling overly amazing. Now I want to make a mention of something else real quick. I know I was criticizing the mixing of like character voices and stuff, how it became very hard to understand what was being said a lot of the time. I don't want it to get confused with like just general sound design in this movie, because I actually thought they did a good job at like the ambient noise and all of the eerie creaks and all of that, where it could actually sell you on like the intensity and the hopelessness of a situation with nothing more than just the sounds of what was going on around Simon, which I know in Iron Lung is something fans praised a lot about the game, how its use of sound was very unnerving. I do think the movie for the most part did a good job at that too. I thought it excelled in certain cases of using sound to unnerve viewers or showcase just how dreadful it would be to be trapped in this fucking submarine at the bottom of an ocean of blood with an eldritch horror fucking fish thing all around you, right? I think they did a good job using sound and ambient noise to be spooky, but I would never actually call this like a scary movie per se. It's more of like an exploration of dread in kind of like a high concept sci-fi world that I think is done well enough. I enjoyed it. I don't think it's perfect or anything, but I do think it's a very, very strong debut here for a self-financed and distributed YouTuber movie. Like, this is just a solid movie on its own two legs, even if you don't know who Markiplier is, but I really do think it is not a movie that everyone's going to like. Mainly because I think the first act just moves very, very slow for anyone that's not already a fan of Iron Lung or watching Markiplier. But overall, I think it's solid. I was impressed, and I'm really curious to see if Markiplier will do other ventures like this going forward. I think he does have like a very strong talent for it, and I think this was a very decent showcase that makes me kind of excited to see if he'll do anything else with this going into the future. Anyway, that's really about it. See ya.